Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games, back with another cool pinball repair video for you today. We're going to start working on this Bally Lost World. We've done one of these before on video, but we figured everybody might enjoy seeing another one. We bought these locally off of a guy. He had two of them actually. And it's basically had a bunch of parts removed and been put into storage and forgotten about for a long time. So we're going to go through it and get it doing its thing again. Not in the greatest of shape, but this one's actually in better shape than the other one. So we'll see what we can do with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a cart and throw the body up on it, and then we'll look inside of it and see what we got going on. Okay, so this is what the inside looks like. We had a few of the scorecards and nothing else. It's just some of the wiring harness and the playfield. The playfield looks pretty good. Let's see here. I don't see anything obvious. That looks a little dirty, but I don't think that's burnt up. It's just typical condition. Looks complete. I don't see anything major missing. Even the flippers are there. Alright, so we can work with that, but the playfield is not the best. The top. So we've got all the plastics, it looks like, but you can see up here it's pretty filthy. Got a little bit of graining going on, but not too bad. But the main problem is someone has put mylar over dirt. So you see how the light hits it right there? That's the original wax that painted and I don't know if it's clear coat or what it is, but that's the original finished playfield. And then that is a big mylar sticker that they put over it to protect the playfield. So this is what it does without mylar. So the mylar saved the playfield, but they didn't get it perfectly clean before they put the mylar on it. So if you've seen my videos before, I don't take mylar off because it just, on a playfield this worn, you're just going to ruin all the paint that's under the mylar. So basically we've got to work with this. So we're going to try to clean it up a little bit. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put the head on it. So I painted that little grill was loose. I put some screws in it to hold it in place, and I painted the neck because it's a lot easier to do it without the head on it, right? And then we're going to pop the head up on there. The way it's held in place is with 4 little bolts with washers, which we happen to have. But if you're missing those, you can order them. I don't know what size they are. I would guess. I'm not going to guess. But you can find that information out online. So I'm going to pop this up on there very carefully, because whenever it doesn't have the bolts in it, it's a little wobbly, because you got to open the door, which throws the weight off. So I'm going to put it up on there, get some bolts in it, and then we'll take a look inside of it. We got the head bolted on, as you can see. Now this thing is filthy. I was going to vacuum and clean it, but I figured I'd just show you how they usually are whenever you drag them out of a warehouse or an outbuilding somewhere. So it's got dirt everywhere. So basically the power comes in and it goes to this power voltage regulator board and this power transformer here. It's all there. On these Bally's, this bottom connector that goes on the bottom gets scorched, obviously. Look, that's just completely, the heat has just made it so brittle that it just snaps apart. Very common, does it all the time. So we'll put a new connector on that. It also looks like our pins are all kind of nasty, so I'm going to see if those will clean up or if I need to replace them. So the power comes up, goes into the power brick. It creates a bunch of voltages and then goes up here to this solenoid board. So the solenoid board is still in it. Looks very clean. That should be, doesn't look like it's been rebuilt or anything though, so that should be easy to get going again. The voltage comes out of the solenoid regulator board and goes over to the game board. Now, when we got this game in, I believe That was probably a different one. Everything runs together. But there's no battery on it, so I was going to take credit for that and say I cut it off whenever we got it in, but it looks like somebody else already had something on here because there's a wire soldered to it. So somebody has removed the battery from the game board, which is great because that means that the battery didn't leak alkaline all over the board and destroy everything. So the board looks like it's very fixable. So that'll be, we'll film that, us fixing that. This is the lamp regulator board. Everything looks good except, look at that. So that transistor has blown apart. That's fun. Okay, and then also on Lost World, it had Bally's new soundboard at the time. Look at this. They had a no chimes, it actually made sounds. So it's got the little soundboard in it like it should, which is good. You don't, that's kind of a pain to get one of those. It's a little expensive. So the way this works is, usually this is fine and you can rebuild it, right? The solenoid board, there's tons of them floating around out there. So if you get a game and it doesn't have this, you can get another one for like 20 bucks or even less. Go look on eBay, you'll see what I'm saying. Very, very inexpensive, and then you fix whatever you get, or you fix the one that's in it. So usually that, if this board's missing, who cares? It's like 20 bucks to get one, another used one like this. Okay, the main PCB, yeah, that's kind of expensive. But if it doesn't have a ton of acid damage or alkaline damage, usually you can fix it. So we'll be able to fix that, no problem. You can also buy a brand new board, which is like a big upgrade. The little lamp regulator board, dime a dozen. There's tons of them out there that have been out of parted machines and things, so you can buy them for $10, $15 used. But this thing is like 60, 70, 80 bucks because it was only in a few games. So the solenoid regulator board was probably in 50 games. MPU was probably in 50 games. Lamp board was probably in 50 games. This was in like 5, 6 games. So if that's missing, it's a big pain in the butt. I guess not really. I mean, 60, 70 bucks isn't that big of a deal. But all the displays are missing. What have they done to me? What have they done to me? So that's some serious money right there. So I've got a bunch of displays put away, so I'll have to dig through and see if we can scrounge together 5 good ones for this machine, but we'll get to that later. So the first thing I think we'll do is we'll try to get some signs of life going on this thing. So what that means is all of the wirings down at the bottom, it's been disconnected from all this stuff. So I'll drag that out, try to put it back where it goes, get some stuff plugged back in, and then the first thing that the power does is it goes over here to this power regulator. So we're going to have to take it out, work on it a little bit, and then we're going to have to work on these connectors. So we'll have to do that before we do anything, because I mean you won't even get light bulbs on without that. So I'll clean this up a little bit with the vacuum cleaner. I'll get those wires out and kind of put them back where they go, make sure nothing's missing, and then we'll pull that regulator out and start looking at it. So I pulled the power transformer out, I got this regulator board out, and I was showing you how the pins were all burnt up. I popped them off. This connector here looks pretty good, so I'm going to leave it, but this one was, some of the pins were burnt. This one, the pin was burnt really bad right here in the corner. It's all screwed up. And if you look, that first pin connects to this ground, or this plane, which also connects to this 4th pin. So if you look on the back, it was so bad that it burnt off the board. So the first pin and the 4th pin should be connected. So I'm going to put some jumpers on it to make it nice and solid. Put it back, and I've got some new connectors here that I'm going to put on it. And get it nice and clean. You've also got 3 bridge rectifiers here. They're all fine. Didn't have any problems with that. I'm going to clean up the fuses and the fuse holders. None of the fuses were blown. I'm going to test these diodes, but if one of those was bad, it would have blew this fuse. The 2 resistors look fine. And so there's not really much to it, except you got to get your connectors good, you got to get the connections on the fuses good, and you got to make sure the 3 bridge rectifiers are fine. And if there's obvious physical damage like a resistor, a lot of times these will break, so one will be broke or something. So we're going to get good connectors on it, and then we'll put it back in the machine. So we put it back together, put it back in the machine, and I didn't do that big connector on the bottom yet, but I repinned the connector over there that was all burned up. And so now we get to check the voltages. So this will be fun to do with one hand. I could use the tripod, but that's not as fun. So let's see here. We're going to check the first one. Hopefully I won't blow anything up trying this. Bam! So there's the first one. And the ground on these is the bottom of this resistor here. So that first one is 5.8, 5.9 volts. So that's what you want. It's between 5 and 6 volts for the general illumination lights, and you can see that they're coming on. Okay, so let's move over to the second one. Try not to blow anything up here. Okay, second one is 186 volts. That's fine. That's the voltage that goes up here does the high voltage for the displays. Okay, the third one. 12.87 volts, that's correct. It goes up here, and this board turns it into yet another 5 volt. And then you skip the fourth one, you go to the fifth one. If I can not get electroshocked. Trying to make sure it's not going to touch the wrong thing. Usually you do this with 2 hands, people. Okay, the fifth one gives me 46 volts. That's correct. That's the solenoid voltage. And so the fourth one that we skipped is actually an AC voltage. Oh, you know what? I was wrong. I said that the one was the general illumination voltage. That's not right. This is the general illumination voltage. I can not kill myself. Please don't kill me, Mr. Voltage Regulator Board. I'm too young. Okay, got that in there. So AC voltage 7.45 volts. That's the voltage that's going to the playfield. And it's a little high, but I think it'll lower down once we get all the bulbs plugged in. I think it works like that. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so we got that in there. So what I'm going to do next is I've got to fix that big connector that goes on the bottom, which sends the voltage up to the solenoid board. So before I plug that in, I'm going to unplug the Mpu board, so the problem you might have is that it might send the 12 volts up here like it's supposed to, but this board might be screwed up, and the 12 volts, this can short in such a way that it sends 12 volts out on the 5 volt line, which would fry everything on the board. So we're going to unplug the other boards so that they don't get their 5 volts in before we do that. So we're going to fix that connector, then plug it back in, and then we're going to test some voltages up here on the solenoid board. So we got our new connector on there, got it all nice and fresh. This is all the crap we cut off of it. One of them was taped, and we were able to cut that at the right spot so that we don't need that tape anymore. Get rid of all of that junk. And then, like we said, we unplugged all of the other boards so that nothing's getting power, just in case this solenoid board is screwed up. And then I've continued my questionable practice of using the wrong probe to probe it, but it's going to happen all right. So we've got that on ground, and so now we're going to check some voltages on this board. So if you look real close, there's some little test points up here. The game is on. So this top test point is giving us 15 volts. Can you see that? 15 volts. The next one is giving us 5 volts. So the board is actually turning the 15 into 5. You've got some other ones down here. That one's not quite 5. This one, not quite 5. And this one is not quite 5. And you tie a couple of them together whenever you do the mods to that board. But basically the 5 volt regulator is working. So we're good, but I'm going to take this board out anyway and do some stuff on it. But it looks like we're starting with a pretty good working board. We don't have anything, like if you tested this and it was given that instead of 5 it was giving you 12 or that 15 or whatever, well then you know that you need to look at that circuit. But we already know that it's basically working. We're just going to go through and freshen some stuff up. So I'm going to pull this board out and we'll do a few things to it. So I'll show you the updates that I like to do. I got all these from Clay at pinrepair.com because he's the man, obviously. The filter cap, it's very imperative that you replace that. So the one that was on there was an 11,000 UF 20 volt. I put a 15,000 UF 25 volt. Apparently in that situation it doesn't matter if you go up a little bit. So I think you can go up to like 20,000. And the games that had 3 flippers I think had a 15,000 on them. So we replaced that with a new cap. You always got to check in this high voltage area to see if any of this stuff's burned up. A lot of times you'll have a resistor burn up, or one of these transistors will be bad. They're all fine on this one. This cap up here you don't have to replace. If it's bad, what'll happen is you'll get like a flickering on the displays and stuff like that. And then you can replace it if you want. This is the 5-volt regulator. Usually they're good. There's a cap here. I've never seen an instance where I needed to replace it. You check all of the transistors while you got the board out. All of them are fine. None of those are shorted together. So you basically just check between the middle leg and the 2 outside legs and see if any of them are shorted, and they're not. You clean the pins where all the connectors go so that they make good connection. And then there's a few updates you do. This is test point 5, where we checked the 12 volt that was coming in and it was high as like 15 volt or something, which is common because it's unregulated. And then this test point 1 is 5 volts. So we had that, and then remember when we got down here some of these were a little lower. The reason that it does that is because the 5 volts goes out this connector, goes somewhere else, and then comes back in this connector, and so there's voltage drop across all those connectors. So one of the updates is you short this test point 1 to test point 3 with a little jumper wire. Oh, and also all the connectors you resolder the pins on the back, so that in case there's cold solder joints. So you put that little jumper. Now you got to be careful that you don't put it from test point 5, which is the top one, to test point 3, or from test point 5 to test point 1. If you do any of that, you're shorting 12 to 5, and that's a big no-no. But by putting that jumper from there to there, you stabilize the 5 volts on all of the little test pins, right? And then one of the other updates is this cap that you replace is the 5-volt filter capacitor. So the 5 volts runs all of the chips on this board and all of the chips on every other board. So it goes over to the main MPU and runs all the chips. So if that capacitor is old, it gets ripple on the line and it can cause all kinds of problems. And so the ground, you upgrade on it too. So this pin here is ground, and on the back it's right here. So it does the same thing. It gets its ground by going over here to a pin, and it's basically grounded off of the harness somewhere else. So what you can do is you can short it to the ground underneath it. So this big trace here is also a ground. So you can short the two together, and it basically reinforces the ground, so it's getting its ground on the board instead of off of the harness. And then you do the exact same thing on this capacitor up here that we were talking about for the displays. This is the ground right here, and it runs over to just a single pin on the connector. Well, if that connector's bad or whatever, that ground won't have a good connection. So you can short the ground to the ground that's running around the edge of the board, and so now it's getting a nice ground to the frame and to the to everything else on the board. So there's other updates you can do and stuff too. I just do those because they're really easy. You can do them while you got the thing out. It doesn't cost anything. The only cost was the capacitor. So now it's upgraded. It's in much better shape, doing its thing. And I'll put this little cover back on here. It goes like that. There's a little hole in the top of it so that you can still adjust this pot. Sometimes these pots are bad. You have to replace that sometimes. That one seems like it's still fine. But so the only other things I would do if I was going to make it like, brand new, is you could replace this cap, you could replace that pot, and you might consider replacing the 3055 regulator. Or is that a 3055? It's a 7815 regulator. You might consider replacing that just because they might fail, you know. But these are all working fine, so I'm leaving them. So we'll bolt it back in, and oh, I should show on here there are 2 test points. If you see, there's one that's a test point 2, and that one's a test point 4. So one of these will be up over 200 volts, and the other one will be whatever you adjust this to, and that's the voltage going to your displays. So you can make it as low as like 180 or up to like 210, but if you make it a lower voltage like 180, your displays will last longer. So I'll put it back in and adjust that to where I get down to around 180 so that the displays don't have as much juice running through them, since they're the old, I guess, what did we figure out those are called? Is it plasma? Whatever the original displays are, so they don't have as much juice running through them, and they hopefully won't burn up as quick. If you get a problem in this section, what will happen is that voltage will either go away or it'll short to the input voltage. So the input voltage might be 240 volts, something like that. And so you'll be putting out 240 volts to the displays, and they'll burn so brightly that you'll get burn marks on the actual displays. They look like crap. We don't want that, people. Do not want that. So I'll get them between 180 and 190. Now, if you go too low, I'm just guessing at 180. Well, I think 180 is good, but if you go too low, you'll have a problem where they don't light up right, or they don't light up at all, or they flicker, or they don't look like they're getting enough juice. So you might have to bump it up a little bit, but keep it below 200 for show. For show. So we'll put it back in there, and we'll move on to, I guess our next one is the MPU board. So I'll put this in. We'll hook it up, and I'll plug the damn MPU board in, and we'll see if the thing's still booting after all of these years. I'm sure it needs service, but we'll try it dry and see it. So we put it back in, plugged everything up. I put the connector back on for the voltage for the MPU. I put the connectors back on for the lamp board. Put the connector back on for the soundboard. So we're going to see if the thing does anything. This is the LED. It gives you a flash code when the board boots up. So the way it works is there's a quick flash that tells you that it started reading the ROM code, or it did the reset signal, and then it does 7 flashes after that. And depending on how many flashes you get, if you get all 7, the game comes up. Depending on which flash you don't get, like what it stops at, so if you only get 3 flashes, then that tells you what's wrong with the MPU board. So what we're looking for is a quick flash and then 7 more flashes. So this is like the most fun part of fixing one of these. So we're going to see if this thing wants to cooperate. So let's watch let's hope for a quick flash and 7 flashes. Quick flash, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Heck yeah. So basically, it's up and running. I don't have the displays in it, but see the lights blinking and stuff? So it's trying to actually work. The soundboard didn't make any noise, so something's going on there. And you know, most of the lamps aren't working, but some of them are. So the game is actually up and running. So you saw whenever we tested the voltage on this, it was still fine. We haven't even touched the MPU yet, so it was fine. Haven't touched the lamp board yet, so it was kind of trying to work. And our main problem was those connectors being burned up on the power supply. And you saw whenever we tested this, there wasn't any problems on the power supply. It was just the connectors. So basically the only thing keeping this thing from at least partially working was burnt up connectors. Crazy. So I think what I'll do now though is, you know, the bulbs that aren't working could be just burned out light bulbs, or it could be problems with the lamp board. We certainly know that one's blown up. But I think what I'll do first is we'll pull out that MPU board and do some updates to it and install the remote battery holder and all of that, just to get that a little more reliable where we can call it done. So we'll work on it next, but we've basically got a partially working game already. So we've cleaned up the MPU, we've cleaned both sides of all the connectors, and we resoldered the connectors on the back. And then I took out each chip and cleaned the legs on the chip. But like you saw, it was still working. But you do stuff like that because it makes it where it's reliable. One of the chips, this 6821 PIA chip, whenever I took it out, it's just so filthy. This is kind of typical. And one of the legs broke off. So I put a different one in. Cleaned everything, cleaned all the chips. There was no acid damage, alkaline damage. And then I put this little remote battery holder on it. I do it like I was saying, the Clay at pinrepair.com. I do it the way he does it. So you get a little battery holder, and it's supposed to have, I think the original one was 3.6 volts. So if you put 3 AA's, you're going to get up to about 4.5 volts, maybe a little bit more, which is fine. And then if you put a diode in, and you put the blocking part towards the board, the reason that you do that is because the original battery was rechargeable, so the board would recharge it. But you don't want it recharging AA batteries. I guess you could put rechargeable AA batteries. That might work. I don't know. Don't do that, people. It might burn something up. I have no clue if that would work, so don't do that if you're thinking about it. But you got the remote battery pack on it, and the reason you do that is if these get all nasty and start leaking alkaline, you'll have it mounted on the bottom of the machine or something up in the top, up in the head, so if it gets all nasty and corroded and it won't mess up the board. Whenever they had it soldered right to the board, whenever it leaks, it eats up that whole part of the board, and sometimes it'll grow. So this just gets the nastiness away from the board, so that hopefully it won't hurt anything. So we're done with this. I'm going to pop it back in, make sure that we've still got our, that it's still booting up. If it is, I'm going to go get the lamp board and bring it back here, so we'll work on the lamp board next. So this is the lamp board. This is in almost every Bally solid state game. Same thing, just clean the connectors, resolder the connectors on the back. They get bad solder joints, and I checked with a multimeter every one of these. All you have to do is just compare them to each other, because they're not all going to be bad, so I compared them all together. All of them are exactly the same. They're all fine, and all of these were fine except that one that had blown up. I replaced it with a slightly different one, which is just a part that I pulled off another one. On these, they've got there's about 5 different versions of these transistors that go in the middle. And here's the one that blew up. So it was time to give up the ghost. Now, it could be that when I put it back in, it'll blow up the new one too. I don't know. I doubt it though. Sometimes that'll happen if like the socket's shorted out or something, but it probably just was its time to go, and so it checked out. So we got this all cleaned up. Nothing really to it. These are very simple, like I said, they're very common. They're in all the games. So we'll slide that back in and see what kind of lights we get now. So all we have left is the soundboard and the displays. So the displays are going to take a while. So we pulled out the soundboard next. It's very simple. Just has some caps on it. We replaced the caps. Reflowed the connectors. And then you have to test these pots to make sure they're not open. So, but they're both testing fine. There's really not much to it. There's a... sometimes you have problems with it, but we won't know until we actually put it in the game. It wasn't making any sound earlier, but replacing the caps might have fixed that. So we're going to put that back in, see if we get any sound. If we don't, we'll have to troubleshoot it. And then when we get that done, we can move on to messing with some displays. So we mounted it back in, and when you turn it on, this is what we're getting. Oop, if I can turn it on. Okay, so basically it's playing little, it's trying to play a little melody, but it's just clicking. It's not actually playing anything. So I'm going to look online. There's a special little website where it kind of explains to you how you can work through these cards. So we're gonna check that out. So that noise you're hearing in the background, that's the pinball in test mode. So there is a web page on the internet called Repairing the Old Bally Sound Card AS-251832 AS-251850 with a scope. And this was made by a guy named Oliver, I think it's K-A-E-G-I. Oliver Kaegi. And I believe this gentleman has passed away, but he was like the man when it came to Bally pinball machines. He really knew how to work on them. And I believe he's passed away, but the website is still up. So I may be wrong about that. If he's still out there, sorry. But I don't think he's any longer with us. Well, anyway, he made this great website where it shows you how to fix these cards. And you just kind of walk through them. So you check the power points and everything. All of that's good on it. And then you check the tone trigger generator, and he tells you look right here and check to see if the wave is right. Well, I don't have an oscilloscope, but I've got a logic probe, and it is pulsing on that, so we're good. And then he tells you look in the tone data processor. So he tells you to check a few things, and we checked all that. All of that's good. And then he tells you to check in this area, which I guess is still the tone data processor. And right here he's saying check U11, pin 11. If not pulsing, replace U11. Right? So U11, pin 11. Okay, so let's go check it out. I've got the logic probe hooked up. So I've hooked the logic probe up to the ground and the 5 on the board. This is chip U11. Okay, and there's 7 pins, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Here's pin 11. So it's not pulsing. So I'm going to pull that out, and we're going to swap U11 and see if that gets us up and running. So that got our sound back, but it sounds like crap, man. Way too low of a pitch. So we're almost there, though. We're almost there. All right, folks, that's more like it. As you can see, I didn't guess right first, but this little amplifier chip here, I had replaced when I did the capacitors because it's always bad. It's the preamp. But what I didn't notice was, yes, it was bad, but this resistor next to it was bad too. That's supposed to be a 10K resistor, and it had opened up, so it was like 5 megs or something. So if you get one and it's doing that crazy stuff, check that resistor. By the way, that resistor, it's like a 2-cent part. You can play with, on these you can do the sound. This is the volume, and this one is the sustain. So you can go back the other way. You kind of have to do it to someone's ear. Some people get annoyed whenever there's a little bit of an overtone to it like that. So you kind of gotta, you know, literally play it by ear. Okay, so we have it doing its thing, but we don't have the displays working yet. But we've fixed the power supply. I mean the transformer and the rectifier board. The solenoid board, then we fixed the MPU board, then we fixed the lamp board, then we fixed the soundboard. So next up will be the displays. But don't you think this video is going on long enough? I think the displays will have to be a separate video. But we do have the thing actually up and running. You just can't play it yet because you can't score or anything, and the playfield's destroyed. So those will be next time. So join us next time when we get the displays working. We got a whole bunch of them that are broken, messed up, and we'll work through them and get some that look good that we can put in this sucker. So give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film all this. Now, if you want to see all the games that we have available for sale right now, even if this video is old and you're finding it years later, all the games that we have available for sale right now are on our website at lionsarcade.com. And you can also come by and see us. We're in downtown Rock Hill, South Carolina. We got a whole building full of these games that we're working on selling. that's kind of what we do. We also sell like classic video games and stuff like that. So if you're not local, so you can't come by, and you don't want to buy one, so you don't care about checking out our website, that's fine. Just subscribe to us here on YouTube, and every time we get another game in that we're working on or something that we fixed up, we will film a little video for it and put it up on our channel. If you go look at all of our old videos, you'll see that that's true. We update a couple times a week for years, people, years. Go look at all our old videos, hundreds of them. Go check them out. But leave us a thumbs up and leave your comments below about what you think, and we'll see you on the next video where we'll get this thing a little farther along.